very warm welcome. It's another Thank God Friday to the start of the weekend. I am Melissa Enoch here at the FMDQ studios in Lagos.
And I'm Grace Barago. It's the 21st of November. We hope you had a great week so far.
All right, let's tee off with your news now. Afreximbank has reported a strong set of 9-month 2025 results, highlighting its resilient performance and steady balance sheet growth. Total assets rose 6.98% to $42.9 billion, supported by higher liquidity levels, with cash and cash equivalents surging $7.6 billion on the back of successful fundraising and early loan repayments. The bank maintained solid asset quality with the NPL ratio at 2.51%, while operating income grew 5.24% to $1.44 billion, supported by a strong cost-to-income ratio of 21%. Gross income also edged up to $2.4 billion. Overall, Afreximbank delivered a robust performance in the period, with net income increasing to $654.3 million and shareholders' funds rising to $7.7 billion on the back of profits and new equity inflows. In South Africa, the G20 Africa Energy Investment Forum has opened today, hosted by the African Energy Chamber, and it started with a strong call for Africa to tap into its own pension funds to close the continent's widening infrastructure financing gap. AEC Executive Chairman NJ Ayuk warned that with global financial systems increasingly deprioritizing Africa's industrialization, the continent must look inward and mobilize its domestic capital markets. Let's now listen to him as well as some of the other speakers.
As we have this gathering here, we also felt it was important for us to give them a chance to report to us some of the issues that they've discussed. Issues around energy poverty. That's as we sit here, we still have 600 million in our continent and more without access to electricity, 900 million without access to clean cooking. That is a human rights issue and a critical issue of our time. We are still living in Africa that we still need more than $15 billion investment when it comes to refineries, and also a lot more investment when it comes to our energy infrastructure. Because if we don't have that energy infrastructure, then we still keep our continent at a place where it's going to be dependent on external forces when it comes into that. I can report to you today that with the Africa Refiners and Distributors Association, they have been making plans and making moves, getting private sector and really pushing that we participate. It is time for us to look at Africa differently, at a continent that we still have to rely on external forces to invest. But we are still looking at almost $400 billion in African pension funds. But we reside in mostly Western countries, but we have to think different. How do we tap into pension funds to really finance our energy deficit, our energy infrastructure, and give Africans a fighting chance? Because there's nothing we could do, whether you look at renewables or you look at fossil fuels. But when you get this energy, you have to get this energy to people. Grid, boosting our grid infrastructure, and looking at tank farms, refining capacities, we might have to start thinking different. We might have to put skin in the game, folks. It's time for us to put skin in the game.
It is the belief that no African child should be born on the wrong side of a transmission line, destined for darkness, while others live beneath an unbroken canopy of light. It is the assertion that development cannot be rationed, postponed, or selectively granted. It is the insistence that the dignity of our people must never be negotiated. There are moments in the life of a people when history pauses and holds its breath. Moments when a continent gathers its full weight of its past and the full possibility of its future and chooses a new direction. Today is such a moment. We stand on African soil. We stand in Johannesburg. We stand in a city that has known struggles and conquests. suffering and triumph, darkness and illumination, and through it all refused to surrender its belief in a future of dignity and justice. Across our continent, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, from the Sahara to the Cape Alcalas, a powerful truth resonates. Africa stands at the most consequential turning point in modern history. Our continent is rising. Our young people are declaring their place in the world. Our economies are poised to transform. Our resources, our ingenuity, and our determination are unmatched.
Africa possesses 60% of the world's best solar resources, vast, untapped hydropower, significant reserves of natural gas, and the critical minerals essential for the green transition. And I've been told that there is nothing that is critical. All mining is important by my professor this morning. Yeah. Yet nearly 600 million of our people still lack access to reliable electricity. This is not merely a developmental challenge. It is the single greatest impediment to our industrialization, the realization of the African Free Trade Area, and the achievement of our blueprint, the Agenda 2063. The theme of this forum calls for real solutions. Today, I want to focus on the architecture we're building at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, your development agency, honorable ministers, to move capital from the boardroom to the grid. And this has been stated by the minister earlier on, ensuring that we end energy poverty with speed and access.
Still in the region, the UK government and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange have entered into a 12-month partnership to strengthen South Africa's technology sector. The collaboration will support local startups with investor readiness, training, capital matching opportunities, and access to the JSE's private placements platform and alternative exchange. The initiative forms part of the UK's broader economic engagement in South Africa, aimed at deepening trade and investment ties between both countries. In Mauritius, the Mauritius Commercial Bank has provided a structured financing package to Invictus Investment Company PLC to support its expansion across Africa and the Middle East. The facility combines acquisition finance with revolving credit line, providing additional working capital as Invictus scales its agro-food operations. MCB said the funding will support growth in processing, logistics, and distribution networks while helping consolidate value-added food and FMCG assets serving regional markets. In other news, day 2 of the African Review of Economics and Finance Conference 2025 has continued with high-level discussions on the continent's economic outlook, financial integration, and policy reforms. Here are excerpts.
New classical economy detaches economics from morality and from political contestation. As a result, economic decisions according to the new classical economies are depoliticized and even deracinated, treating communities as consumers, ecosystems as externalities, and culture as irrelevant. These are some of the crude principles or ideals of new classical economics. So now let's look at indigenous economics, which is we want to offer as an alternative to this new classical economics. What is different about indigenous economics? Indigenous economics will see the new classical ideals and prescriptions as deeply alien to Africans. They are built on assumption that they are not just foreign, but in many ways incompatible with African communities. So most of these things, principles that of new classical economics, are incompatible with how African communities have historically organized production, distribution, and reproduction.
Finally, on News Now, the Kenya Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program Pitch Competition and Graduation has taken place in Kenya today, bringing together young agri-entrepreneurs, investors, and industry stakeholders. The event showcased innovative agribusiness solutions and marked the completion of the latest CARE cohort aimed at boosting food security, job creation, and value chain development. Let's take excerpts.
We are talking for Africa about over 6,500 active startups, plus 8% annual growth and 3.5 billion of US dollar invested. So I think it's an impressive number. And but what is impressive, in my opinion, is the terrific rise of clean tech. In 2023, over 430 million US dollar invested. That means plus 25%, making Africa's third most funded sector. And in Kenya, clean and climate-smart technology account for 18% of all new startups funded since 2021. In 2024, and in a tighter capital environment, Cleantech secured, only Cleantech secured 192 million US dollar in equity funding. That means that this is the second most funded sector in Africa after the fintech. That is the king of investment. And I would like also to emphasize the Kenya's role as a regional hub for this investment. Only this country hosts 44 accelerators and incubators.
That's it for today's edition of News Now. The show returns shortly with Grace Agbaragu at the FMDQ Archives Room, giving us our markets round. Stick around. Welcome back to Money Moves. Let's now go over to Grace for today's market update. Hello there, Grace.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's now take a look at the last trading day of the week, starting off with the equities. The Nigerian equities declined by 0.27%, while the BRVM also declined 0.47% to 346.03. The Nairobi Securities Exchange eased 0.19% to 187.91. In South Africa, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange fell sharply by 1.96%, while the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange gained 0.59%. And in North Africa, the MASI gained 0.27%. Let's do a quick round on some of the Pan-African currencies. The Rand weakened 1.02% to 17.41 against the US dollar. The Egyptian pound edged up 0.12% to 47.44, and the CFA franc gained 0.05%. The Kenyan shilling slipped 0.10% to 129.52. The Moroccan dirham rose 0.11% to 9.29, while the Naira depreciated 0.25%, trading at 1,455 Naira 53 kobo. Let's switch into the commodities data deck, beginning with energy prices. Brent crude dropped 1.15% to $62.65, and US WTI slid 1.34% to $58.21. Natural gas firmed 1.27% to $4.53, while Arabian gasoline fell 0.99% to $1.89 as of 12:32 GMT. Now, finally, two metals prices. Gold declined 0.36%, while copper fell 0.70% to $4.93, and platinum dropped 1.30%. Aluminium rose 0.36%, while iron ore was little changed, down 0.02% as of 12:23 GMT. Now, finally, and that's it for Money Moves Markets. Back to you, Melissa.
Grace, thank you very much for those market updates. And that's it on today's edition of Money Moves. We hope you enjoyed the show. From all of us here at the FMBQ studios, we say thank you very much for watching and bye for now.